Did the creation take 6 days, or did it take millions of years? I think a lot of the time, the most impassioned combatants in the arguments around this question think that this is an argument about the truth of Scripture. It isn't. It usually isn't. It's usually an argument about truth. Actually, it's an argument about the relationship between truth and fact, and which one is bigger. All this goes way beyond the creation story, which we will circle back to later. It goes beyond the truth of Scripture as well. It's all about how we understand reality in the modern world. That is, the world shaped by the modern worldview. The modern worldview is a pagan view of the world, and by pagan I mean it is not lit by the light of the gospel. And even though it's incompatible with Christianity, all of us are influenced by its ideas. The modern worldview, or modernism, has been around for a couple centuries now, and it's built on a blend of Christian and Greek ideas. Let's start with the Greeks. In ancient Greece, the rocky soil and the hot, dry weather made farming anything but olive oil and sheep very difficult. So for their sustenance, they turned to the Mediterranean, to trade. Trade brought them into contact with different peoples, different cultures and ideas. So you can see how contact with all these different ideas might result in a people who came to value novelty, and the discussions around what's better, this or that. The Greeks became a people who loved to debate, using reason to determine what was good and true and beautiful. They valued excellence and the freedom of the individual to pursue it in their own life. They celebrated excellence of all kinds, athletic, artistic, intellectual, political. They built a society that loved freedom and novelty and personal achievement. Does that sound familiar? That's because it spread to Rome, and the Romans brought it all over Europe, where it merged with Christianity, a synthesis which resulted in humanism and scientific revolution, which eventually came to full flowering in the Enlightenment, and it became the dominant worldview of our culture. The Enlightenment was an intellectual movement of the 17th and 18th centuries in Europe. An influential group of thinkers believed that the world would be a better place if ignorance and superstition were eliminated by the clear light of reason. You could say that Christianity was partly responsible for the Enlightenment, in not so good a way. The Reformation had fragmented the church, and by the 17th century there was a lot of killing. Catholic Christians killed Protestant Christians over different interpretations of Scripture. The Protestant Christians killed the Catholic Christians and different kinds of Protestant Christians over different interpretations of Scripture. And of course, it wasn't all about religion. Humanity doesn't usually need much of an excuse to kill each other. But Enlightenment thinkers naively figured that adherence to the principles of reason, as opposed to religion, would unify civilization and bring about peace. Who is going to war against someone over 2 + 2 make 4? Christianity was also responsible for the Enlightenment in a more positive way. The Church taught that God created an ordered and predictable cosmos. The scientists of the scientific revolution, which prepared the way for the Enlightenment, believed that because it was ordered out of chaos in creation, the cosmos was predictable. You need an ordered universe for science to work, and Christianity offered one. By the end of the 19th century, the Enlightenment ideals had fully coalesced into the modern worldview. Reason had been applied, with science, to the physical world to create all kinds of wonderful technology. Steam engines, the telegraph, light bulbs, and dynamite. Reason had also been applied to humanity, as we organized our societies with political, economic, and education systems based on rational principles. We made ourselves the objects of scientific study with the new sciences of psychology, anthropology, and sociology. We had left God behind us and set out full of optimism about where our new gods, reason, science, and technology, would take us. They would be our salvation. They would lead us to utopia. In order to maintain this illusion through the 1800s, we needed to suppress or ignore the dark side of modernism. The desperate plight of factory workers in England, the destruction of indigenous societies, the plundering of Africa by Western nations, the rape of China by the same Western nations who, it could be argued, behaved like abusive drug dealers in all this. These things might have indicated that our modern view of reality might not be all that it was cracked up to be, but we didn't really want to look too carefully. This is the way it is with worldviews. Anything that doesn't jive with the master narrative is somehow not seen, at least not at first. In a nutshell, this is the modern worldview. God is dead. Human reason, driving advances in science and technology, will lead to a better world. Let's go into this in just a little bit more detail. There are 5 characteristics of modernism, of the modern worldview. Rationalism is the first. In modernism, reason is God. With the Christian God out of the picture, human reason was the source of truth. The light in the Enlightenment is reason. Like Christianity, modernity believes in absolute truth. It's just that its source is exclusively human reason, rather than reason and revelation as it is in Christianity. Reason spawned incredible advances in science and technology. It seemed as if our faith was well placed. It seemed as if reason would be our salvation. The second characteristic is materialism. Reality is material. There is nothing that transcends the material world, or if there is, it's completely irrelevant. In other words, there is no such thing as the supernatural, only the natural. If human reason is a source of truth and reality is only the physical, then science is the path to discovering the truth, eventually all truth. This only works in a material world, but since that's what it is, there's no problem, says the modern. Individualism is the third characteristic of modernism. I am my own boss. In the absence of God, reason moves into the driver's seat, and because I possess reason, I am free, no king, no church, no tradition, no peer pressure even. No one can tell me what to do. I get to choose. You can see why democracy is such a big hit in modernism. The fourth characteristic, faith in progress. Humanity is on an upward trajectory, and this is because of reason and its offspring, science and technology. Modernity places a lot of faith in progress. It has long believed that we need to get rid of silly superstitions and religious beliefs. Reason rather than religion will allow the human race to continue up the road toward perfection, and science and technology will solve all the problems that we face or will face. And last, secularism. There is no God, but people have this annoying habit of believing in non-rational things. And to deal with these, the modern mind created dichotomies. A dichotomy identifies and creates oppositions between two ideas that aren't necessarily opposed. They are often just aspects of a larger whole. So we have faith and reason, nature and grace, natural and supernatural. But they all mean the same thing. Can you see that these modern dichotomies seem to have a bit of an agenda? They set the physical and the rational in opposition to the spiritual and non-rational. They create two categories and then they sort of trash the one. Tragically, many Christians have become modernized and have accepted the opposition, and then they trash the other half of it. But neither the Christian nor the modern seems to question the legitimacy of the opposition. The biblical authors didn't think of these things in opposition, and we probably shouldn't either. Let's look at the dichotomy that radically separates public from private. The modern person has a public life and a private life, and neither the twain shall meet. The public life, which involves big things that we all share, like government, education, and the workplace and the marketplace, these things are ruled by reason. Because reason was seen as universal, Enlightenment idealists believed that discussing things in rational ways and using rational principles will arrive at agreement without conflict. The private sphere was a place for divisive, non-rational things like religion and other cultural peculiarities, personal beliefs and opinions. Keep them locked away where they can't do any damage. You hear the assertion of this principle in the comment section across the internet, where people say, you can't impose your personal beliefs on others. If you think about it for just a few seconds, you realize that a human being is a whole entity that lives out all aspects of his or her life simultaneously. It's impossible to not bring private beliefs into the public sphere. One politician believes that stable families benefit society. Another politician believes that individual freedom is paramount. When voting on a bill to make divorce easier in their jurisdiction, is it possible for either of them to leave their own private beliefs out of the vote? Should we expect them to? Many modern Christians, however, have taken the same opposition and have used the terms sacred and secular and created a more Christianized version of this same dichotomy. It's pretty much exactly the same thing as the public-private one, but it puts the God stuff on top so that it seems like it's good. But it amounts to the same thing. It limits the sovereignty of God. God gets the sacred sphere, church and stuff. The secular is part of life where Jesus isn't Lord. Saying, I don't listen to secular music, is saying that there is a part of life over which Christ does not reign. Abraham Kuyper disagrees. He wrote, there is not a square inch in the whole domain of our human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine. If this is true, then we've got to be a lot more careful when we use the term secular, and we might need to start cutting back from the term Christian for the same reason. You don't find William Golding's Lord of the Flies in the Christian bookstore, but its contents are largely consistent with Scripture. If Christ is truly Lord of all, is there really any such thing as secular music or a Christian bookstore? So let's get back to the six-day creation argument. My concern here is not whether the world was created in 6 or 6 million days. My concern is with the foundation of our argument. Christians believe that the Bible is true. So what does that mean? Historically, when Christians say something is true, with a capital T, it's a truth rooted in God, and it is a universal truth for everyone at all times and all places, whether they believed in it or not. Jesus is Lord is one such truth. Or to borrow from Orwell's implied moral example in 1984, it is always wrong to throw sulfuric acid into a child's face. Modernism has replaced God with reason, so truth is no longer rooted in Him. Truth has moved to the individual human being and has become something particular and private. It's no longer universal. Fact has replaced truth as universal. Facts are said to be rooted in reality, which is reduced to only the material and only the rational. Truth is now mere beliefs and opinions. In this way, the claim Baskin-Robbins Pralines and Cream is the best ice cream flavor in the world is equivalent to, for God so loved the world that He gave His only Son. Now let's be clear here. The idea that facts are bigger than truth is a modern idea. It is not biblical. It is not lit by the light of the gospel. It's a pagan idea. So, is the Bible true? My first question would be, in what sense? I know from experience that when most people ask this question, they mean, is the Bible true in the modern sense? Because they don't know of another kind of truth. I think that all Christians believe that Genesis 1 is true. The debate is over what they mean by truth, because there is more than one kind. I believe Christians enter the creation discussion agreeing that God exists, and that truth exists, and that truth is rooted in Him, and that the Bible is His revelation, and that it is in the form that He wanted us to receive it in. That's a lot to agree on. And I think we should enter into this discussion agreeing on one more thing, that truth is bigger than facts and not the other way around, because that's a limited and a pagan view of truth. So now we can carry on our discussion about Genesis 1 and everything else contained in this incredible book, but the discussion will be trying to understand what God is revealing, and not about what fits into modern or postmodern notions about what constitutes truth. This video isn't about the creation controversy. It's about the modern worldview and how it is still a powerful force in our culture, and that it is also part of the way we, as Christians, look at the world. There is a Christian critique to each of the aspects of modernism, and this will be the subject of future videos. Please subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss a thing. Thank you, and shalom.